right, everybody. Welcome back to the Purple Podcast. This is episode number 39 now, coming back at you with a recap and review of The Last of Us, this being episode 4 of, this series here. The episode title is Please Hold My Hand, after a lyric in the Hank Williams song that is playing, Alone and Forsaken, which serves as a metaphor to describe not only this episode, but also just the general idea and theme of this whole entire show and the Alone and Forsaken. So kind of follows it throughout. I think we're getting a little bit of a music theme in this show so far, which I think they've done really well with the music. I think that always helps to further along the overall production of any kind of TV series or show, is having a good soundtrack and good music with it. So far they've definitely emphasized some music. We had like Depeche Mode in the first episode, being that 80s song ending out it. So very strong closer there. Not sure if there was anything for the second one. Maybe if I went back and looked, I could find a song from the second one. But the third one, obviously, long time. And then when we come in here again, it's another cassette tape that Ellie finds in the car there. That's a Hank Williams one. A lot of scenes from Ellie and Joel traveling during this episode that are right out of the video game, including just basically or literally exact dialogue. Let's get a little intro here. Coming off of a very polarizing episode 3, it was going to be hard to follow up this in any kind of way. Heard some conversation where people were thinking that they gave us the Bill and Frank episode a little too early, just because we haven't gotten that far into our actual story yet. So they were saying that it's a little bit, it might be difficult to go back to this world that we were just in from that episode there. It just might feel a little, disconnected potentially. But I think this episode served its purpose. I think it did really well. Of the 4 so far, it's probably my least favorite, but that doesn't mean it's a bad episode by any means. It's just hard. I really, truly enjoyed episode 3. As I touched on briefly as I touched in last episode, incredibly polarizing episode 3. So it makes sense that this one was a little less low-key, or a little more low-key than that previous one. Just looking at like the IMDb ratings, I mentioned how people were rating bombing it, so basically just giving it a 1 star. If we look at long time right now, it's sitting at a 7.9. I think last week we were at an 8.1. But overall, like total interaction and amount of ratings is sitting at 169,739 ratings. The next highest is When You're Lost in Darkness, the very first episode, and a little over, or just 80,000, about 500 rated on that. So, like I said, ton of interaction, got a lot of eyeballs on this show. If we look at just some of the numbers which we've been following along with as well, the jump to episode 4 from episode 3 was a 17% increase in viewers. It reached 7.5 million viewers. And this was also during the Grammys. So there was another show going on at the same exact time, taking eyes from this, but we still experienced a 17% increase. At this point in time now, since episode 1, viewership for The Last of Us is up 60% from the very beginning. So crazy growth with this show. Another side note, and something that we touched on our last episode, was the scene when they mentioned that they were 10 miles outside of Boston or west of Boston. I called that out myself. It was something I noticed when watching the episode, but apparently other people have as well. I saw an Instagram post from IGN that people were calling it out, including Stephen King. I just thought it because, I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a much smaller city than Boston, and you can't go 10 miles outside of Louisville and find something this remote. But yeah, let's kind of start moving towards this episode here. So episode 4, as I said, Please Hold My Hand. Slower setup episode, but really serves as just that kind of beginning of foundation and growth for Joel and Ellie, no doubt. So a little slower episode, them traveling for most of the time. but it does really serve a good purpose in that it's really bringing Joel and Ellie together. This is the first time we're seeing them for an extended period of time together without Tess on this mission. And we begin in the gas station scene, so no flashback. It appears that I don't know if we're going to be completely through with flashbacks, but we definitely have not began with those in the previous 2 episodes. Last episode was a complete and total flashback, so kind of applied, but in this one, this is the first episode that we had absolutely 0 flashbacks from my recollection, at least. We begin seeing Ellie pointing the gun in the mirror, kind of acting tough, looking at herself, a little foreboding in terms of where that's going to end up going in the episode 4. So she's acting like a big tough person, pointing this gun in the mirror. Interesting scene in itself. Throughout this scene, as I said earlier, we're going to see a lot of the theme of Joel and Ellie and how Ellie is breaking down Joel's barriers throughout the episode, throughout the series as well. We are introduced to the no puns intended 2, TOO, being 2 joke book, which is directly from the video game as well. That's something that Ellie carried with her, asked Joel those throughout the video game as well, so in the car scene. But this no puns intended joke book of just terrible dad jokes are a way that we see that serves as a way to break down Joel's emotional barriers throughout this entire episode as Ellie goes back to asking him another one. There's different moments, it kind of progresses. At first he doesn't know the answer. The next one he does know the answer, or what was it? So I guess later on in the episode he does end up knowing it, and there's different bits to it where you feel him each time that she says it holding back the smile or grin a little bit less, so until he finally can't help it in the end and he does end up laughing with her. But we see the siphon scene in here as well. Another good scene depicting this relationship between the two. They're not exactly father-daughter, but they kind of poke fun at each other the same way that Sarah and Joel had done in that the first episode. So we see a little bit of that kind of relationship, and you can feel Joel struggling with this inner balance of not opening himself up to Ellie, but at the same time, it's to some degree impossible not to, because he's spending this much time with her, and overall he's going to end up getting that protective instinct where he wants to take care of her. He does care for her, but he's siphoning that gas out. Good way to also depict that resources are scarce. They're going to have to go through, and I think that's a good thing that they're carrying from the video game as well, because resourcing, looting, all that was very important, and we are getting a lot of that in this show as well. So he's siphoning. Ellie makes fun of him for not knowing the actual science between, or how siphoning works, which I thought was just overall pretty well done. A good way to include that dialogue there, done in a different way. I thought it was kind of a neat look at it, because obviously, Joel being the older figure, the know-it-all guy who's lived in the real world, trying to say something smart when she asks him how that works, and it just being complete utter bullshit, and Ellie calling him on it, I think worked really well and is a very good scene, no matter how kind of small that was. Jumping forward, I guess we call this the next scene here, Joel and Ellie in the car. This is where we do see a lot of those really direct quotes that are in the video game. So regarding the Hank Williams, so asking if it makes Joel nostalgic, said no, this is actually before my time, but it is a winner, directly from the video game. The porno mag that Bill had in the truck, directly from the video game. They actually recreated the cover for that as well. Some pretty grotesque jokes that Ellie throws out there though, but she has a pretty good sense of humor there, and Joel doesn't want to hear any of it at this point. Throughout this scene, I thought we got another really good glimpse at this world. We get to travel along the highway. We see cars paved off the road, military vehicles, tanks, the amusement park. So a lot of really good imagery that puts you into this into this world very thoroughly. I really like the highways aspect of it. just seeing basically the highway scenes, as well as the idea of just traveling through these remote areas, I thought was really cool. Everyone's driven on the highway. Everyone's had a road trip. So these things still kind of pervade. You see them. You see like the McDonald's sign. You see the Arby's sign. So making good on that reference earlier in the last episode. We get a Lovey's in there as well, the gas station. What's kind of funny is when you see some of these places on the road signs, these locations, McDonald's, Arby's, Burger King, you can't help but think that their food probably contributed to the spread of the fungus in the initial go. They probably, they have food, they have burgers, they have sandwiches, roast beef sandwiches. So they have bread in there. So they probably did contribute to it as well. So kind of funny, a little Easter eggy, I guess you could say, diving into and just really looking into something, and just kind of a cool little neat fact and thing that I noticed or called to. But overall, I really liked that. I liked seeing the just the imagery of the world broken down. It's fun. I was kind of thinking, do we think everything really would have just completely fallen apart in 20 years that bad? Like even like bridges, I feel like a bridge would still be standing, but I guess it just goes, that's not very effective if you don't. So things like that. But overall, I think that was a good scene to kind of show you some more of the world traveling throughout it. It's too remote here for fungus, so we're also getting some dialogue between Ellie and Joel, with him teaching her about the way, why there's fungus out there. He keeps hammering home that, of course, the infected are dangerous, but in this world, it's probably the people are more dangerous. The fungus aren't that smart. I think he says directly at one point, people are definitely the ones you need to be watching out for here. Coming to the close in their drive, the drive in that day, the sun is setting. They think they're gonna call it for a night. Joel gets off the road, drives into the forest. As I mentioned earlier, people are more dangerous. He's telling Ellie why they can't have a fire here, even though they're freezing cold, because if there's fire, there's going to be smoke. People are smarter than fungus. It's not going to attract the infected. It's too remote for them anyways to be out there, pretty much. But those hunters, the people out there, are more dangerous. They will see that smoke. It will attract them, and they will come to it. So no fire. Joel is always on his guard, and these are just other aspects of him and his character that we see. Is it because, at this point, is it more so just because he's so used to saving his own ass, he's worried about himself? I would lean on him coming to some kind of sense of obligation towards Ellie. So she asks him if they're going to be safe, if anyone's going to find them. He straight up tells her, no one's going to find us. However, does he really believe himself saying that, or is he just trying to protect her? Because at that point, he never goes to sleep, stays up all night, watching guard, doing what Joel does, showing some of that fatherly instinct. And, as we see, as it will continue through this episode, as it'll continue through the whole entire series, he is opening up to Ellie, or at least feeling more of a sense of obligation and need to protect for here. Overall, I thought the camping scene was really well done. I am a big kind of like, I wouldn't even say like remote, but I'm a big stars guy, so that was really cool. Just the general feeling of remoteness, I think, tied in and was really good. A really good exploration in this kind of world, because you always think about that. What would you do in a zombie apocalypse? What would be the best thing to do? You probably want to be somewhere remotely. So you get an idea of that. You get to see it, that those kind of havens do exist. There's still beauty in this world. You see the stars up at night. There's no lights. There's no buildings. So all that, I guess, light pollution is no longer there. So you get a beautiful night full of stars. As I said, one of my favorite things. And just overall, a nice little, father-daughter time in the forest. Get to hang out. They have some Chef Boyardee and bond over that. Joel says the joke about it must have been Frank's sleeping bag because it smelled good. So, overall, their chemistry is coming together. It's funny that, maybe the first thing that we see them agree on, not the first thing, there's definitely a couple things, but one of the first things we see them agree on in the entire show is Chef Boyardee. So as a Chef Boyardee boy myself, or At one point in time, I did really like it. Very easy, simple and easy, delicious. And there's all kinds of different variations that, do well for themselves there. So having some 20-year-old Chef Boyardee, both enjoying it there at the end of the night before Joel ends up getting back up. She says the joke, and, Joel just barely starts to grin there, having known the joke. That's when he knows it. So I was touching on that earlier. He knows the joke there, guesses it for her, and is kind of grinning. Doesn't let her know he's smiling yet or laughing. He doesn't. But he's turning, guys. He's turning. Flash to the next morning with the coffee getting made up. Good for Joel, still getting his coffee in. This is something that was also mentioned in the video game, but they do it in a coffee shop. So just another way to include some of that dialogue, or at least some similar conversations they had in a different place by all means. But Joel, in this world, he's still getting his coffee in, even though it's probably disgusting, as Ellie alluded to. Maybe that's just because she is not a coffee drinker yet herself. But in that morning drive, we get to hear a little bit more about Tommy's backstory. So Joel is the older brother of Tommy and has always felt like that he needs to take care of him. This is what drives Joel in every single form and fashion, is family. Every decision that he makes is in order to protect his family and look after his family. We see, why he's going all the way out to Wyoming is to get Tommy. Everything that he did earlier in the show was for his daughter. That's why he cut everything off. For Tess, she was his one person, so he'd do anything for her. When Tess was, getting beaten up, she mentioned that to the guy. He's like, my friend's not going to like this. It's what Joel does. He's a protector. He takes care of people. Bill talked about it as well. Any motherfucker who stands in our way, woe to them, essentially. So Joel always has felt protective of his brother. His brother has always felt the need to join in the cause. He's been a joiner, is what Joel says. Joined the army when he was 18. Didn't feel like a hero after that. Everything breaks out, goes to shit. Hunters are going to Boston, or just, I guess, a general party of people are going to Boston. He joins them. Joel goes after him so as to protect him. Didn't really want to be there. This is where Joel does some things he doesn't necessarily want to do, but he is there for another purpose. It's not like he's a cold-blooded killer. As we, Ellie asks him later in the episode, how did you know? We'll get to that in a second there. But this is where Joel meets Tess as well, and the hunters going to Boston. And then, finally, Tommy ends up joining the Fireflies as well. So, like I said, he's a joiner, or as Joel said, he's a joiner. He always wants to be a part of the cause to save the world. So he joins the Fireflies, gets him out west, and now at this point he's decided to leave them to the last that Joel is hurt. That's why he's going out there, because he's basically all alone at this point. Like I said, family drives everything that Joel does. Tess was like family. He mentions that. That's why he was like that with her. But at this point in time in the episode, Joel has not, or in the series, as a whole, Joel has not admitted to Ellie being any kind of familial kind of relationship. So she is referred to as cargo, and it cuts pretty hard there. I don't know how much it really hurts Ellie at the time, but I bet, I feel like we didn't see a lot from her acting there so as to mean that. But as a viewer, hearing that was like, oh man, that's hard, just to still be called cargo. And we're still early on, so I don't think it's the most egregious thing Joel could have said, but pretty damn mean, man, I'll be honest. But that's just him trying to hide all his emotions and feelings. He's a big, strong man. He can't do that. All right. We end up arriving in Kansas City. Here's probably one of the biggest differences in the episodes, is that in the video game, they're actually in Pittsburgh is where they're at. So we're a bit further along at this point. One issue that I kind of have with this, and it couldn't have happened another way because this is the story, but I feel like you definitely would try to avoid any major city possible. And I think Joel, being someone who is not an idiot, is a survivor, would have recognized this. I don't think he would have gone into Kansas City. I don't think he would have gone into Pittsburgh in the video game, especially after that roadblock. I think his spidey senses are going off at that point. He says, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to go another way. That doesn't happen, which, obviously they should. But this is part of the story. This has to happen. But that's definitely something where the storyline is like, okay, you probably could have avoided this. And he probably would have as well, knowing Joel's character. But we arrive in Kansas City. There is a roadblock. Decide to go around. End up in the city, lost, not understanding the directions. I think Joel's going to have a tough time getting lost. I truly do. But he makes his mistakes as well. He's losing a step to some degree. But we see here that the hunters have overthrown Fedra. There is a set up kind of wall and guard that isn't of Fedra making. We see burnt bodies on the road, so we know these people they're going to do whatever they can to survive. They're pretty ruthless in themselves. Where we eventually get to that iconic trap scene, which is directly from the video game as well. A little bit different in how it's done and shown. I think there were a lot more characters in the video game that you had to kill out, but it makes sense to make it a more even fight here. But we see that trap. The man is pretending to be hurt. Joel reads it from the get-go, understands. It's because, as he says later, that he's been on both sides of it. So he knows. Trap scene. They drop that, I guess, a cinder block onto their car, drives into the shop where they get into a shootout. Ellie gets pushed away by Joel, essentially. So he tells her to, get hiding. So protective instincts there. He's going to take care of this. Joel does hit a shot. Good for him. I've been openly critical about his shooting ability so far, but he does hit his shots. But at the end of the day, I can't give him too much credit because he does end up needing saving. This is where Bill's gun comes in handy. We knew it was gonna at some point in time. If you've seen the video game, obviously. If you've seen the show, of course, it would have to happen at some point too. They didn't just give her a gun for no reason. But Joel gets into a point where he's getting his ass cooked by a little kid. Not really a little kid, but a younger man. Brian is his name, who we soon find out. Ellie comes out and saves his life. And this is a big turning point, I think, in terms of character relationships between Ellie and Joel, where Joel has to respect her to some degree at this point. He owes her his life, which is not a small thing by any means. But Ellie shoots him in the back. And I thought this was really powerful, a really strong scene overall. Is, Brian shot. In the show or in the video game, Ellie kills him with the shot. In this, Brian's still alive. And this is a theme that has been continuing throughout the series, which will continue as we go to our next episodes as well, is this kind of overall gray aspect to each character. No one is cut and dry a good person. No one's cut and dry a bad person, which I think is good. So we see Brian here, and you feel some kind of sympathy for him, even though he just was going to do the same exact thing to our two protagonists here. He's crying. He's begging for his life. He can't move his legs. He says, just take me to my mom. We didn't need to do this. Just begging for his life. And you feel for him. And this was just his job. This is part of his crew. This is what people do in this world. So it wasn't necessarily his doing that put him here. He's not just an overtly savage individual. I don't believe. I think they're a little worse than most. They're probably worse than the Fireflies. But as we see, Joel's done these similar things. But ends up, we send Ellie into the other room. Joel takes him out with with the guy's knife that he had offered to them. There's some more resource management there. You can't waste your bullets. Noise concealment. So I think that really ties in well with some of the video game things and how you would behave there. Because what are you going to do? You have a finite amount of bullets. You don't need to kill this person. You don't need to shoot this person. You don't need to alarm them. You don't need to make that noise. Their group is probably relatively close, having just heard the fight of that prior and the truck going into the store. So he stabs him out. They get on out of there. Jump to a character who is completely made up. This is Kathleen, and I think she really portrayed by Melanie Linsky. She's in a couple movies that I have seen. Don't Look Up, so she's Leonardo DiCaprio's wife in that, as well as I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore, which is with Frodo from The Lord of the Rings, so Elijah Wood. Two pretty decently movies, so I did recognize her. Funny character choice because she's kind of like that sweet. I heard a podcast earlier calling her a Karen, but she's got that soft unsureness about her, but at the same time she's fucking ruthless. But we meet Kathleen here. She's not a video game. She more so serves as a way to give the hunters more of a storyline here, a more multi-dimensional character. But we see her first with this doctor interrogation, the doctor who gave, or I guess birthed her, brought her out into this world. She's after a group of people who we know from the video games. If you don't, you don't. Sorry. Henry and Sam. She's after Henry for giving her brother up to Fedra. She's trying to get this doctor to tell her where Henry is as well. Henry's arc in this is he did it to protect his brother. So that's why he had no qualms about giving up her. But this is what turned her into an absolute, just basically devil. This whole scene is essentially setting her up as the leader of this hunters group. We see Perry, who is, I would say, the militant leader of this group. Her second in command. So she's definitely, I think, the leader. I wouldn't even call Perry the co-leader. I think he's more just the militant guy, the general here. Funny fact about Perry is actually that he voices Tommy in the original video game. So Joel's brother, Tommy, the voice of him is who Perry is in this series or this show. After discovering or being brought back the bodies of the fight between Joel and Ellie, she blames this on Henry. So she is fully committed to this idea that Henry is out to get her, is trying to destroy the hunters. She believes that Henry has hired these mercenaries to come kill him, so she believes that Joel and Ellie are mercenaries. She says to her, or to Perry and her group, go out and kill all these people. They are trying to kill all of us. They won't stop until they have, which is just a lot of, tyrant type shit that you see here. She doesn't care to necessarily get the facts straight. She doesn't necessarily know. She doesn't necessarily care, like I said. But she's sending them out. That's what her will is, and that's what she's going to will people to do. We end up seeing her finding a hiding spot of Henry and Sam's, or maybe just Sam's. We see that food is low. She's not going to give away, or Henry's not going to let Sam go hungry or starve. So obviously he'll be back there. They're doubling up guards on that. Also, forgot to mention earlier, as soon as the doctor isn't useless in the time being, she's like, oh, can any of these people that they brought back be saved? They say, nope, they're dead. She just kills the doctor, which is probably a pretty silly thing to do considering there's not going to be many doctors in this world anymore. So probably should keep one of those on hand, even if you don't or have some plot or desire that leads you to killing this man. You probably just shouldn't, because you probably should keep doctors around in an apocalypse with not many of them. But she finds that hiding spot, going back to that, sees some pictures, and then finally we cut to the scene between Perry and her going into this other room. Very ominous. We see the ground moving, shaking. What are we supposed to do about this? Perry is very concerned about it, and Kathleen, she's on that one mind track right now. She's like, put it off. We'll just we'll close up this building. No worries at all. We'll worry about it later. So as you see, this is going to be a downfall of hers to some degree, because she is so one track minded. She's losing sight of other potentially dangerous and harmful things here. And this is, as we've seen from the trailer for next week as well, this is going to be where we meet our bloater for the first time. How it comes out, I don't know, but the scene looks pretty insane. So excited for it. Looking forward to that. But our last kind of bit here in this episode, we see Joel and Ellie hiding. They're jumping from building to building. Really good character development and just overall this companionship building in terms of the Joel showing Ellie how to use the gun, saying you shouldn't have had to do that. You're right, Joel, you shouldn't get your ass kicked by people and make little girls to do your killing for you, but whatever. Ellie pulls the Uno reverse and says it's not her first time killing someone, so we get to see a little bit into her side as well. But both of them are to some degree opening up to each other. I know Ellie was more prone to try earlier, but she's still holding back the real hurt in her life. So not her first time killing someone. This is probably alluding to that point or this thing that she doesn't necessarily want to cover yet. They are slowly opening up. They are slowly bonding. Like I said, Joel has at least respect for her. She saved his life. So opening up to some of that degree. So opening up to some degree there. We're walking upstairs. As I mentioned earlier, Ellie asked Joel, how'd you know that guy wasn't hurt? So referring back to the ambush scene. And Joel lets her know that I've been on both sides. She asks him, have you ever killed any innocent people? Which he doesn't answer. And we're probably meant to take that as a yes, that he has done that. He has done terrible things. And he's definitely ashamed to it because I think at heart Joel is a good guy. But there's some more of that gray in this show, which I think is good overall because it makes you wonder. This is definitely a world where there will be a lot more gray because it's a lot more oriented on survival and what links you'll go to survive can lead you astray a lot of the times here because it's what you have to do. It's either one way or the other. Either you're dead or they're dead. So might as well be them. So Joel's been on both sides, doesn't answer it, and we see that kind of gray theme throughout, which I think is really realistic here. Where we finally cut to them going to sleep, and this is where everything kind of culminates and locks in that these guys are going to be a dynamic duo. They're definitely made a big step forward in their relationship together. We have them going to sleep for the night. She recognizes his bad ear, kind of calls it out. We have that no pun intended laugh. That's mostly what I'm getting to. Joel's protective. He sets the glass alarm up outside of their door. But we have the no pun intended joke where he legitimately laughs and finally doesn't use all his might to suppress it. Just lets it out, laughs, and we see that these guys are becoming something together, no doubt, and I'm very excited to see it going forward. The last scene we see here is Ellie saying to Joel, wake up, and both of them have guns on them. We see our little boy Sam looking swag as hell, scoped in on Joel, said, shh, don't say a word. So excited for this next episode. I think a lot is going to come in this one. I think it's going to be a lot more, maybe not, well, it'll definitely be more action-based, but that's not necessarily what I'm looking for. But I think just a lot more will happen in terms of the plot. Are we out of Kansas City by the end of next episode? I think it makes sense to. I'm excited to see these Henry and Sam characters. I think it's going to be fun. I don't want to ruin anything for anyone who has never played the video game, but excited to see where this next episode goes. Think it should be a pretty fun one. From the trailer alone, we know that we are going to get that bloater. I guess unless it was 2 episodes ahead, but I don't think they'd be showing an episode 5 trailer for something that's 2 episodes ahead. But I thought it was a good episode. It was slower, but I do think as a whole we're getting really good content with Joel and Ellie together in this one, and it's just serving as a way to really build up their relationship, show this traveling of them alone. This is the first full episode we got of just basically them doing their thing together. The cutscene to Kathleen, I think, is good to get the hunters in there. It's not as compelling, in my opinion. It gives Henry and Sam some more backstory that isn't necessarily there either. in the video game, which is good as a whole. I think there are definitely holes in stories in video games just because, at the end of the day, it is a game. It's going to be portrayed differently. You're going to be with your protagonist for the whole time. But you need some of this backstory, and I think it is good, even though it's a lot less compelling than when I'm seeing Joel and Ellie on the screen. But that's our recap, guys. Let's hop into our categories now. First of which being our favorite scenes. There were a few good ones, not a lot of amazing scenes in this episode. I actually have a wild card that came out and won this one. But if I had to look at some good ones, obviously the ambush, I think that's a good scene. I think that final one at the very end, so them hiding and Joel laughing, I think that's very high. But I think my number one overall scene from this episode was actually the camping scene. And maybe I alluded to that being maybe one of my favorite scenes from the episode, just because of overall I like that feeling of remoteness. I liked being in the wilderness. I like seeing the stars. There's that sense of danger that says we can't have a fire even though it's remote in this point. But I like the bonding in there, I think, most of all out of any of the scenes in this episode, which were all dedicated pretty much towards different ways that Joel and Ellie are bonding. So if we go through the whole thing, we see them at the gas station. So we begin the jokes as well as the siphoning, busting balls joke. In the car, they have Hank Williams playing together. The camp scene, they get the Chef Boyardee. Joel's cracking jokes about Frank's is the one that probably smelt well, as well as the Joel knowing the pun joke and then grinning at it. So I think that was good. That's when we're right on the brink. We're ready. We're that domino's ready to tip in terms of Joel opening up to her. We're right on the edge. He's grinning, but he's not letting it out yet. And I like that just anticipation that the scene has you at in terms of their relationship and the overall just feeling and vibe of that location, the remoteness. I think that scene I just really enjoyed watching. And then we still see Joel is still his paranoid self, staying up to protect her at night. So I thought that was a really well shot scene, really cool. I like the Chef Boyardee reference as well. That's my boy, the chef. But yeah, that's going to be my favorite scene. The rest of the places, there is more bonding, of course, but I think that's their best bonding in it. The next day, they talk about family aspects, arrive together. Then, Ellie shoots someone in the back for him. Great bonding. But overall, the whole entire episode is based upon their relationship and their bonding together. And I think that scene did the best for them. Favorite characters, who won the episode? There's not a ton of options, more than there have been before. Actually, I guess maybe this might be the most amount of options that we've had. But we don't see a ton of people. We don't have a lot of people that could really be viable as our favorite characters. But we have Ellie, Joel, Kathleen, Perry, Henry, and Sam. Sam's got a good case for him with that swag scope. Like I said, he walks up. This is a little boy. He's kind of looking like a Ninja Turtle with that. He's looking Raphael, like the red Ninja Turtle with his superhero I guess I don't even know what you call a mask because it's just around his eyes, but he's got that superhero mask on and he's just pointing a gun. This is a little kid, square at Joel's face, and has the swag in him. He has the dog in him to throw up that shh finger to him. Goes shh. Just has it cold-blooded as hell. So Sam's got a pretty good case, even though we haven't seen much of him. Henry, don't really see much of him, so don't really know. Perry, like I said, he's better than Kathleen in my opinion. I think I like him. He's a reluctant, or not super reluctant, but he's going with her, but I don't think he agrees with everything that she's saying. I think that ground scene kind of really set that up and showing that, damn, he's got things that he thinks are a pretty good, they need to put some energy towards because shit's getting scary. We probably need to tell him, but Kathleen is a ruthless tyrant. So we see her and she's probably going to, it's going to lead to her demise. Joel needs to be bailed out again this episode. So I'm going to call him at this point a certified liability to the group. So once again, Ellie, who, as you all recall from my very first episode, I wasn't super keen on at the beginning. So Ellie comes away with another win. She has won me over at this point. She has definitely came into the character. If I really thought about it and went through a list of people that I might have wanted to see instead of her, I probably could have came up with better names. I probably still could, but I'm not going to do that. I'm buying it. I like her. I do like her character. She's grown into it a bit more. Like I said, I like seeing a little bit more of the actual bonding, not just her being an asshole the whole time. Like at first she was really, really mean, but I'm cool with her now. She's definitely coming around. She's latching on to me a bit more, in a very similar fashion with Joel. It's like, okay, she's slowly but winning me over here, which I think has been overall a pretty good success from the show in creating that feeling and kind of emulating that relationship. I don't know if it was purposeful for me to initially not like her, but let's say it is, and this is just an absolutely beautifully well done character arc here so far. And it's almost, it's out of necessity. I had to like her. So same with Joel. You're around her so much, hey, you might as well like her. And she is slowly growing on me. Probably quicker than Joel, because Joel has a little more darkness in him that is making him suppress these things and feelings. So I'm going to go with Ellie. We have the camping scene for our favorite scene. Favorite character of the episode or who won it, we're going with Ellie. Other themes and things, some pretty good ones here. Obviously, the Joel and Ellie relationship. This is the whole purpose of this episode, I would say. So we see some of that love/hope, the familial aspects. So this relationship is getting better. It's getting fun to watch on screen. I believe in this group. I believe that they're going to be able to tell the story very well. I absolutely have full hope that I'm going to buy this relationship, this chemistry. I think it's going to be a enthralling tale, and episode 3 is a big indicator of the success, I think, for the rest of this show, because they're going to do well with it. They know how to build these relationships up. They know how to grab your goddamn heart and rip it out. So I have full trust and belief that this is going to be a great season of television. Joel and Ellie, that's a theme. No flashbacks at all. So that theme has, I guess, been eliminated. We'll see if it comes back, makes another appearance next week. But music, touched on it a little bit earlier in the episode. The Depeche Mode, Hank Williams, in Long, Long Time. Love that. Big music guy myself. So when you can get some good music into these shows that fit pretty well and carry the theme as well, I think it's just overall, it's very purposeful. And if they're taking the time to have purposeful music and purposeful soundtrack in the show, they're doing their due diligence, and they're really putting a lot of heart into the show, which I love. The Gray. No one's perfect. Anyone that you meet in this world, know how great they might seem, has probably done some pretty bad things because they're still alive. So there's a lot of gray. But where this wins in my mind, in terms of if I compare this to a show like House of Dragon, which is a very similar theme where there's a lot of gray, and I think it's good. I like the realism aspect of it because people are not perfect. There's evils in people, there's goods in people. What wins at the end of the day is good. You need to be trying to have that redeeming quality at the end of the day and be overall arcing towards the goodness. And where I think House of Dragon fails is that there isn't necessarily that redeeming hope or quality. It's just nihilistic, essentially, that everyone is gray and no one's really purpose. Like, they think they're going for the greater good, but it just doesn't, you don't feel that. There's no redeeming arc. That's why I'm like a Lord of the Rings guy, Rings of Power, because there is redeeming aspects of it. There's things that people are striving, there's goodness in the world. And that's what's so great about this, is it is painting that realistic picture. No one's perfect. Everyone's had trouble pasts. They've had to be here. But at the same time, Joel remains intact with the quality because he is, at heart, his morals are in the right place. He's a good person. And we know that this hope and love aspect is still there. And I don't think that House of Dragon necessarily captured that. I think for the most part, it's just a power grab, all of them. They think they're doing the best, but it's out of selfish intent for the most part. And there's no, I guess, good motive to some degree. There's no good in that world, I don't think. There's not a lot of characters you root for, but I'm rooting for Joel. I'm rooting for Ellie in this. They've done bad things, yes, and we don't see it, so that might hurt a little more if we saw Joel killing innocent people. It'd be like, damn, man, like, how am I going to root for this guy? Maybe that would be the case, but I think at the end of the day, Joel has not allowed himself to be completely taken by the devil by any means. It was more so to protect his brother. He had alternative motives that were for the good and just put him in a situation where he had no other choice. So that gray, that realism is good, but at the end of the day, I think you still need to have your protagonist striving or wanting to have good morals and good motives. So we see this throughout the show. So that Fedra soldier that Joel is trading with, I don't think he was a terrible guy. I think he just kind of was a Fedra soldier. That's how he came up. I'm sure he did terrible things, but Joel kills him out. Has to. Brian from the Hunters, we saw that this episode. He seemed like almost like a little kid. He wasn't that old. He was asking for his mom. You don't have to kill me. He was begging for his life. But he was there out of necessity, and at the end of the day, it was kill or get killed. And buddy, you're dead. You're gonna warn them. You're gonna let them know where we're at. We cannot let you live. So you're dead. Joel and Tess did very bad things. So these are just themes that we see throughout. I think they're a very strong push. It's not going to win the episode. I am going to go with Joel and Ellie winning in terms of theme/things, but that's a very close second. That no one's perfect gray theme that I think they've accomplished very well in keeping intact the people's morality, even though they've done really bad things, but that's just the world we're in here. All right, so now let's do our highlights of the episode, guys. This is where we take the winner of each category, being favorite scenes, favorite character, as well as other themes/things. This is where we take the winner of them all, put them up head-to-head to find the number one highlight of the whole entire episode. So we have the camping scene as my favorite scene, Ellie as the favorite character, and my favorite theme/thing from this episode was Joel and Ellie growing closer together, seeing that relationship and building that out. I think this episode served as a way to really dive into that and really begin and kickstart that whole entire relationship. We're seeing it. I'm enjoying it. It feels like the video game where you're starting to get that care and that need. Your partners. He says cargo at the beginning of the episode, and I think by the end of the episode, Ellie's a bit more than cargo to Joel. At the very least, she's someone who saved his life, and he has to be grateful for that to her. But overall, I will say the winner of it has to be that Joel and Ellie relationship. This decision was a lot easier than last week's. There was a lot more firepower in last week's episode, I'll give you that. But at the end of the day, I think this episode really served its purpose. I thought it was a good one. I thought it was my least favorite of the four. But that doesn't mean it was a bad episode by any means here. So let's hop into our Rotten Tomatoes /IMDb. I think I might just need to have to cut out the Rotten Tomatoes aspect, or the Rotten Tomatoes score, just because I don't know how it's working necessarily. We see on episode 1 still sitting at a 100%, episode 2 at 96%, episode 3 98%, and episode 4 another 100%. So I don't love the rankings we're getting there, and I don't think it's showing all the reviews. I think it's just showing like certain reviews, so it's not taking into account all of them. I'd rather get like a more holistic approach and see, including not just critics but just people, so the people's choice. So I think I might just cut Rotten Tomatoes and start doing IMDb, where we see the first episode sitting at a 9.2, episode 2 also a 9.2. As I mentioned earlier, episode 3 is sitting at a 7.9 because of some internet trolls who, one way or another didn't like the episode. Maybe they were just video game stans and they didn't want to see the story stray at all from it. Maybe there's, some other things that we're not going to go into there. But overall, that episode is way too lowly rated. People have taken to make that let's just look at the rating here. So if we look at the overall ratings and what we received here, the amount of people that rated a 5 and the amount of people that rated a 1 star. So let's go inside the rating. Sorry for the delay. So 54.4% of the people who have voted on this gave it a 10. That's 93,107 votes. The other, amounts are kind of spread out until we get to 1, which 27.7% of the voters, or 47,470 votes, have been for a 1 star. So 27% on 1, 54% on 10. Very polarizing, and overall just brought a lot of new eyes to the episode, or to the show as well. So at the end of the day, there's no such thing as bad publicity. Am I right, guys? But we'll keep going with IMDb. This episode sitting at an 8.6, so follows what I'm tracking as well here, as in the first episode 9.2, second episode 9.2, third episode 7.9, which should be way higher, should probably be around that 9 range, and then this fourth episode here being beneath the rest, in my opinion. If I had to rank them 1 through 4 right now, 3 as number 1. Let's go. I would do 1 as number 2, then 2 as number 3, and then 4 as number 4. But altogether, I think the story's been really well made. I'm excited for the rest of it. Concluding thoughts on episode 4, like I said, not the best, but not the worst by any means. Still good television. Just probably could have used more of it. I always, it felt relatively short compared to last week's episode, and like there could have been some more things in there, but nonetheless excited for episode 5. I think they're going to do a great job with it. We're going to get to see a bloater. There's going to be, I would imagine, a lot more action. Are we out of Kansas City at the end of next episode? I'm going to bet yes. We'll see. What do you guys think at home? Yeah, looking forward to it. We get it on a Friday this week, so that's another thing to note with the Super Bowl being on Sunday. We're going to be watching this episode, or episode 5, on Friday night. Looking forward to it. Maybe I'll get a watch party going with my friends. I don't know, but it should be fun. I hope you all enjoy it. I hope you all enjoy these recaps and reviews I'm doing. I truly enjoy doing them. I love the show so far. I'm going to keep doing it. Very busy right now, but I'm going to find time to make this work, guys. But other than that, have a great rest of your week. It's in the early morning here. I got this one actually out before work, so like I said, guys, I'm going to make it work for you guys. Other than that, have a great rest of your week. I'll be seeing you soon. Enjoy the episode Friday night. I'll be back probably sometime during the week. Maybe I'll have time to do it on the weekend. Who knows? Me and Mike will need to collude and get another Top 10s episode back to you very soon. But like I said, and as it keeps coming up, schedules are tough. But we'll figure it out, guys. Love you all. Stay safe. Take care of others around you. I'll be seeing you soon. Purple Podcast, episode number 39.